went off. I don't know. But anyway, Heller versus D.C. versus Heller. So in 2008, the judge was in the minority. He was in the dissenting group, and the majority upheld that the extensive citation from history with extensive citation from history that the founders intended for the right for individuals, some regulations of guns is legal under the Constitution. That was according to Justice Antone Scalia. He wrote, but restrictions that would ban guns in common use. Okay, so we can't have guns. He says the Second Amendment. Scalia said Second Amendment doesn't talk about banning guns. That decision, as John Paul Stevens says, that decision, which I remain convinced was wrong and certainly was debatable. It was debated. You lost because you're a wimp. Because when somebody's breaking in your home and you call the police show up. That doesn't happen for 99% of Americans out here. And he goes on to say, has provided the NRA with a propaganda weapon of immense power. Mr. Stevens wrote in his op-ed and he added, overturning the decision via a constitutional amendment to get rid of the Second Amendment would be simple, and that would do more to weaken the NRA abilities to stymie the legislative debate and block constructive gun control legislation than any other available option. Well, first of all, Mr. Stevens, you forget there are three branches of government, and they're all equal. The executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch, which you were part of, and which you overstepped your authority and overstepped your responsibility on numerous occasions, including Obamacare. But it's not simple to overrule an amendment or to override an amendment. We should know that from the 18th Amendment and the repeal of prohibition with the 21st Amendment, which was done and most of the states ratified it immediately. But you need 2/3 of the Congress voting for ratification, and you need 2/3 of the states voting for ratification of the. You need a vote in Congress of 2/3, and you need a ratification of the states by 2/3. And good luck with that, because even most Democrats in the Congress now wouldn't come out in favor of a ban of so-called it says in this article, so-called assault weapons, much less repeal the right to bear arms. But give credit, they say in this article, give credit to the former justice for honesty about what gun controllers believe deep in their progressive hearts, and the right to own a weapon should be preserved for the state. So look for the RNA to use him as a spokesman more than Dana Loesch. That's because it was brilliant. He said, I want to repeal the Second Amendment. Well, he walked right into the hands of the NRA, the people he was most trying to damage. One thing that I didn't cover in my show today that I'll cover today, I'll cover right now, is we always talk about, when we talk about President Eisenhower leaving the presidency in 61, he gave a speech about the military-industrial complex and beware of the military-industrial complex. And people forget that he talked about, in that same speech, the need for universities in the U.S. to maintain freedom and independence from the government, which is not true today, because these universities and colleges are pandering for grants and pandering for stipends and things like that, and they get grants for research and other programs and activities, and he says we can't let our universities be compromised by sucking at that federal government trough, okay? So he said Eisenhower said the prospect of domination of the nation's schools and scholars by the federal government, project allocations, and the power of money is ever present and is gravely to be regarded. Yet, in holding scientific research and discovery in respect as we should, we must be also alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become captive of a scientific technological elite. Whoa, that's deep, isn't it? And guess who wrote that? A professor from my school, John Clark from the University of Michigan. He was a professor emeritus. I love it, love it, love it. But folks, this is great. This is great. And Ike was absolutely right. He was a great president. I think he was the greatest civil rights president we had. Let's see. So fast forward. What else did we cover? We covered that. Oh, we covered that the crowd size. The crowd size for the march for Our Lives Matter was a lot smaller than projected by the organizers. And the other thing was, 90% of the people who attended the march were over 18. This march that was in Washington, for instance, they put up that Ariana Grande was one of the concert attendees, and she's good. I would go to see a concert with Ariana Grande. She can sing, little bitty thing, but she can sing like a bird. I mean, she's phenomenal. Saw her in Vegas about 4 or 5 years ago. Anyway, she's great. But the crowd was smaller. So they were predicting, they were telling us there were 850,000 people out here, right, in Washington, D.C. It's more like 202. Now, you have to understand that this is the same group that the pundits and the mainstream media use to discount and discredit or try to discredit President Trump's claim on crowd size during the inauguration. Remember, like for 2 weeks they showed this is the size of the Obama inauguration, and this is the size of the Trump inauguration. They called Sean Spicer a liar and all that good stuff. You know, that went on for like 2 weeks, and it continued until they drove Sean out of office as the spokesman for president. So with all that said, the crowd size was only about 203,000. The question you have to ask yourself is, where does the money come from for these people to attend these things? How does a high school student get from Chicago to Washington, D.C.? I didn't give them any money. I don't think the city gave them any money. So where did that money come from? Who's funding this operation? Let's follow the money. You know what I think about the March for Lives is that it's a sham. It's another we're going to grab their guns kind of movement. That's what I think. I'm not impressed. Not impressed with the kids at all, because at the end of the day, where were they when Black Lives Matter was out protesting? They were nowhere to be found. Sorry. So, with all that said, you just need to know that. The other thing that we covered, which was really good, really great, was battle lines drawn over the question of citizenship that's going to be on the 2020 census. Of course, you have the Attorney General for New York comes out and says, we're going to hurt vibrant immigrant communities. Well, if they're legal, then they wouldn't be hurt, would they? Here's a guy who's supposed to be the #1 law enforcement officer of the state of New York, and he's concerned about illegal aliens. He's concerned about upholding the rights of illegals, as same way that these people uphold the rights and put the rights of criminals over the rights of law-abiding citizens and the needs of law-abiding citizens. That's what you're dealing with. And you keep voting these people back in office. That's what I don't get. So the long story short, about 18 attorney generals sent a letter in November to the Commerce Secretary, Wilbur Ross, and asked him not to put the question of citizenship on the ballot. And let's say, and let me just say this. It should be noted from 1820 to 1960, the question of citizenship was always on the census. Period. I remember when the census takers came to our house in 1960. Very clear. These people today, they want to break, they have no morals, they have no values, they have no sense of accountability, and they're totally lawless. And this is coming from some of the top law officials in the land. These are attorney generals of 18 states around the country. Of course, the Justice Department, Department of Commerce fought back, said we need to know who's in the country so that we can determine the right allocation of congressional seats, the right allocation for poverty programs, the right allocation for Medicare, and other federal projects. We can't do that if we don't know who's in these areas. So what the census count, and they have two different types of census things going on here. There's something called the American Community Survey, ACS. And that happens like every year or so. They come out and they take a survey of not as many people, but they do kind of a sampling. And they ask the question, are you a citizen by birth or by naturalization? And they don't ask the legality of your immigration status. So, in December, the Justice Department said the question of citizenship would be added to the census and says it needed a reliable calculation of the citizen voting age population in communities where voting rights violations were suspected. The existing American Community Survey, the ACS, citizenship data couldn't be used for that purpose because the data aren't calculated on the same schedule or with the same precision as census data. Interesting, huh? So, right now, the census data says that we want to count every citizen regardless of their legal status. We want to count every resident, not a citizen, every resident, regardless of their legal status. And what that means is that if you're here, we're going to count you. We're going to count you. You may not be a citizen, but you may be on a visa, or you may be a student from another country or whatever. But about half of the 44 million immigrants in the U.S., we have 44 million immigrants in the U.S. That's more than black folks. That's what I tell people all the time. It's more, you have more immigrants here than black folks. And guess what? Half of that 44 is illegal, unauthorized, illegal. Didn't I say that 11 million is a number we've been using since the 1990s? They're saying here it's 22 million unauthorized immigrants in America, meaning they're illegal. And according to separate estimates made by the Pew Research Center and by the Department of Homeland Security, the federal government came up with these numbers, roughly the same. So, we'll see what happens. But we need to get a handle on who's in the country, who's voting, how many of these illegals are voting, because if you're not a citizen of the United States of America, you shouldn't be voting. But they're voting for Democrats, and they're voting for themselves, and they're voting to stay here, and they're voting for amnesty and all that crap. We got to run them out, and we have to run candidates out of office who support amnesty. I don't care if they're Democrat or Republican or independent. They need to get on with the bandwagon, and that is putting Americans first. Very, very much first. Not second, not third, but first. This is America. This is our country. This is their country. So that the citizenship issue on the or status on the census, 2020 census, is going to be relevant. It's going to be right up there with everything else. And let's see, what else did we cover? What else did we cover? Where are my notes? What else did we cover that was really quick? I'm not going to do Adelson aiding Israel. Not going to do that. can't remember. But I tell you what, we're going to cut this short. This is just a sampling. And tune in tomorrow at Red State Talk Radio, 2 o'clock Eastern. We'll be broadcasting via Facebook Live. And hope you'll join us. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Pass it around. Share my video. Hope we imparted some good knowledge. But remember, we need the question of citizenship on the 2020 census. We need to demand that people who shouldn't be here are deported because they put too much pressure on our system, whether it's our educational system, our health system, our sewage system. There are too many damn illegals here. Other thing is March for Lives Matter. What a sham. Cowardly kids. Be back tomorrow, same time, same place. Thank you.